Aqsa is presently working for GTZ German Technical Corporation की जो एक कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग प्रोजेक्ट है अब मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ वुमेन के साथ अक्सा उस पे काम करती है और ये बात करेगी होम बेस्ड वर्कर्स।
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Harvard and Niket for giving me this opportunity to present. My presentation is based on my experience and analysis pertaining to the industrial labor. This is on power and politics of economic globalization and its impact on women workers, particularly home-based women workers. If you look around, in this very city, there is huge home-based work that is concentrated in areas like Shahbag, Port Lakhpat, and Badami Bagh. And I just want to show you that these are women at home engaged in garment work. This is stitching the police uniform. Very often the government says that, where is the home-based work, but it is actually like, between care economy and blanket making. It's also looking after, because they've incorporated the care economy and also looking and doing the social and economic responsibility combination of the. This is trying to keep up with the time, and this is the bagel industry in Hyderabad that has 80,000 workers there. 35,000 women are employed in the most hazardous and repetitive work. And this is like workplace where this young girl is sitting and doing her work. And this is where if you go to Liberty Market, you see those beautiful uppers of shoes. And this is home-based women workers that are engaged. And this is more like a power play with South government, mostly under military or undemocratic government. And why? Because liberalization, economic globalization is characterized by liberalization of Pakistan economy in 1990 through structural adjustment programs, which are the main implementers of the WTO, World Bank, and IMF policies. And they entail privatization, yani Nishkari, deindustrialization, trade liberalization, high inflation, and export-led growth. That is opening of markets for the free movement of goods and services, and that is favoring the foreign investors to, in fact, encroach on the developing countries' local goods. And the economies, this is the restructuring of economies to serve private rather than the public interest through capitalism mode of production. And the state's role is, the states have actually rolled back, because now it is left to the market to regulate this form of capitalist form of production. Under structured adjustment programs, the states usually lift subsidies from various goods and services on social expenditure, and this further enhances poverty. The process of privatization alone over the decade has caused thousands of workers losing their jobs, and that is male unemployment basically. Market-based employment and competition are encouraged. Export-led growth usually diverts in investment from basic needs, that is particularly food, shelter, clothing, and transport. And it brings women clustering in the informal economy where there are no laws or rights. In Pakistan, about 90% of employment is in the informal economy in the form of home-based work and export processing zones and other small factories. And women are the very edifice on which capitalism rests through home-based production and export processing zones. Now, what is home-based work? It is usually subcontracting of manufacturing processes to home-based production, in which production units actually move into the homes of women. Over 8.2 million, that is 70% women workers are in the home-based, usually piece-rate work. Home-based workers are the poorest of the poor. Usually they are unprotected, and it's due to non-visibility and unacknowledged and unregulated work. Why home-based work? It is because of poverty, supplementing family income, because of male unemployment, unemployment of the earning member, and they're usually approached by family members and neighbors that inform them for meeting basic household needs, contributing to marriage of girls, and also because for them it's very due to social and cultural barriers, they're usually confined to their homes, so it's very convenient for them to get into home-based work. this is also based on first-hand interview with the home-based workers and maybe a little change in the phrasing. Home-based work is usually concentrated in garment, carpet weaving, bangle making, prawn shelling, shoe stitching, incense stick making. Now, the socio-economic status of home-based workers is that they're usually unrecognized as workers, low-paid and low-skilled work here, uneducated, mobility is restricted, lack of access to information, low health, housing, transportation and education facilities, job security dilemmas, minimum bargaining power and organizing, because it's so scattered and it's very difficult for them to organize. Chances of empowering themselves are low. Capacity to cope has added double burden on social as well as economic responsibilities. Less say in household decision making or independence in spending money. Sometimes harsh reaction from family members due to less time for household chores, and this is mainly from the in-laws. Working conditions are very poor, repetitive and hazardous work, mainly in the bangle industry, because there are chemicals that are used, वो dyes होती हैं for welding the bangles, और उसकी वजह से a lot of women are suffering from lung diseases. Unregulated work, long hours and low wages, usually piece rate based. Homes are used as workplaces, highly exploited by middle agents, lowest in the value chain context. And I'll just explain this further. Legal status is there's no recognition as workers in the labor laws or national policies, because the whole idea of a worker is premised on a male image. So when we're talking about workers, it's always the male that comes into mind. No specific policy or legislation to ensure their right to services or social security benefits. I'll just touch base on free trade zones, because their casualization of labor has also spread to the free trade zones or the export processing zones. And there also they are usually employed in low skilled and low production, whereas men are in supervisory or production management positions. Their also work is characterized by hazardous conditions, and it promotes unhealthy competition. Or I visited the export processing zone in Karachi, and they had this assembly line production like A, B, C. और उसमें ये था कि and they were acknowledged, like if A would finish, they'd say, oh, A is the best. So usually what the women used to do is they used to work very fast, और जब वो सिलाई करती थी तो वो जो needle है वो बहुत बारीक होती है, तो वो उनके हाथ में चुभ जाती थी, और they had to pay for their own medical injuries के लिए उनको खुद करना पड़ता था, because the factory would not reimburse them. It's low and irregular wages, और वो कहती हैं कि अगर हम overtime ना लगाएं तो हमारा गुजारा नहीं होता. So they were actually staying late, and which is also puts them in a very vulnerable position. Enhanced as part of the Now, as already mentioned by Zenith, also multinational corporations do not invest in countries जहाँ पे trade unions बहुत powerful हों. तो हम इसमें export processing zones में like countries like America, South Korea, Japan, and the EU, they have major investments, and they have threatened to pull out if trade unions are introduced. Now, we know that the system, the dominant system or the dominant ideologies which really oppress women, like it's capitalism, feudalism, and patriarchy. So here it's a collusion of patriarchy and capitalism. They're both systems of social inequality. Patriarchy में ये है कि gender inequality is natural, God-given, which is a sociological system that actually says that men are superior than the women. And for capitalism, money is equal to happiness. Everything, your happiness is based on money, on gathering material benefits. Profit maximization is their aim, not welfare, wage labor, and private property. Production is for profit. Capitalists do not conform to basic rights such as food, water, clothes, and shelter. Human relationships are commodified through material gains and commercial advertising. And this is capitalists, they need to generate demand from time to time, because if you see every time, they're introducing mobile phones with different features and, and all. I mean, there's always that brand loyalty, and it's almost the same product, but it comes with different features just to generate demand. Now, work is based on gender ideologies. Investors, production, and managers are males, whereas females are workers in low-paid and unskilled work. And they maintain the status of men as the head of household, controlling resources and decision-making. And here I also want to point out that when we were talking to the women in the export processing zone, then they also pointed out that how sexual harassment is used as a tool to discipline women. Whenever they try to organize themselves, and how on the basis of their sexuality they are controlled by the production supervisors. So when you talk to them, they always talk about, their economic deprivation. But when you dig deeper, when you talk to them, there is, 80% of sexual harassment in export processing zones, and they say that we try out zarur karte hain. So this is what it is, the big fish eating the small, and ये trans nature production है. An idea is always conceptualized in any developed country. फिर वो यहाँ पे उनके agents होते हैं developing countries में, and where they sort of tap on that, and the small factories and ये large manufacturers को ये identify करके, and usually then through the small factories that use women as a source of cheap labor, which is like the middle agents, and so they are in the lowest context of production, the middle. So it's basically for capitalists like maximizing of profit and minimizing of cost and risk. Alternatives क्या हो सकते हैं? Some legal measures and commitments to promote more just economic rights through alternatives. That is, organized home-based women workers for collective bargaining through associations or cooperatives. And it's very important to make the governance institutions responsive and accountable, and that is promoting women's agency and promoting their leadership now. Some initiatives for a specific policy and legislation for home-based workers by NGOs working on the issues, and this is like Eurofam, HomeNet, Sangi, the Women Workers Helpline that carried out in Aqsa, and Tools for Equity. Now, since that result in growing investment in social spending, importance of developing alternatives such as the social protection, which means that explicitly benefit women and that women workers, that is health, education, food rights, and a decent living. And a decent living is something like even at 3% of the gross domestic production of the country to ensure that. Advocating with government for recognition of home-based women workers in the labour laws, and they need to be recognized there. And then you have the, of course, the ILO conventions, and these are the freedom of association and the right to organize themselves. They have the right to unionize, and they have the right to organize and bargain collectively. And it's so important to bargain collectively because globalization also promotes this individualism and individual interest, because when you talk to them, they say mere masail. So they need to all come together saying that this is our collective issue. Abolition of force, and that is recognition of home-based work as work. These are some of the clauses that I just picked up, and that is the right to organize and collective bargaining and also to establish their own organization. And the right to unionize, it's very important. And then measures also, some minimum wage rate, because minimum wage rate, I think to fix why it only applies to the formal sector, but not in the, and these women are actually contributing to our economy. So men benefit both economically and material. UN statistics, women do more than 60% of the hours of work done in the world, but they get 10% of the world's income and own 1% of the world's property. So we need to come together.